bicentennial, bicentennial celebration of founding this country. And of course, that time was Smithville. But anyway, secondly, I really owe a thanks to the Wilmington paper because they were kind enough Sunday to advertise my talk. This article that she did say it has to do with a TV series which I've never seen called the Outlanders. It's the Scots. I was in Scotland, but moving mostly to North Carolina. So, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too. As Bob pointed out, this whole thing started last year was the 250th. I'm big on big anniversaries. It was the 250th anniversary of the consecration of St. Philip's in Brunswick, which was done in, excuse me, 1769, 1768. And I was I'm the historian for St. Philip's Church here in Southport, so I was putting together some stuff, and as I did, it dawned on me, man, that was kind of a really interesting period from the time that that North Carolina became a royal colony in 1729, and the American Revolution. And that's really going to be the focal point of our talk today. And it's going to be in the form of a conversation. I'm not big on electronic presentations. I'm not smart enough to do that. But I don't think this kind of conversation lends itself to that anyway. So we're going to talk about the Lower Cape Fear, 3 colonial governors, royal colonial governors, and only 5, and how we all developed. We're going to wind up with Southport, Wilmington, and Southport, Brunswick. Anyway, let's start with Virginia, though. You know, we all know that 1607, Jamestown became the first permanent English colony. We all know that they struggled really at that time. Lots and lots of people died there until they were smart enough to move inland, and the Indians told them how to grow tobacco. Eureka! All of a sudden, they had something to export. Decided not to compensate for not finding gold. And so they grew and prospered. And by the mid-1650s, Virginia was one of the most prosperous colonies in British colonial America. Excuse me. There was a big problem with growing tobacco. It sucks nutrients out of the soil. It likes a light sandy loam with lots of humus in it, but it just really sucks it out. In fact, when I was a kid, growing up not too far from here, they used to claim that if you wanted to grow 1,000 pounds of tobacco, you had to put 2,000 pounds of fertilizer in the field. It's really a huge consumer of plant food. And of course, in the mid-1650s, they didn't have plant food. They had cow manure and stuff like that. No chemical fertilizers. The importation of guarana from the Caribbean had not started yet. And so you could only grow 3, 4, maybe 5 crops, and then the yield went to nothing. So the solution to that was we had to find new land, new farmland. And obviously, there's plenty of it. I mean, it's still thinly populated. You could only go so far west to the land where it was not suitable for that type of farming, or north. So the natural progression was to move south. And by the mid-1650s, the Virginians were crossing what is now the North Carolina border and taking up land in the northeastern part of North Carolina. And so the first permanent settlers in North Carolina were from Virginia, rich planters, slave-based economy, growing tobacco, and primarily tobacco, some other crops as well. Meanwhile, in 1663, the Lord Proprietors received this huge block of land that extends from the Virginia border south to Spanish Florida. Basically, what the current Virginia, North Carolina border to the Savannah River. That was Carolina in 1663. And these Lord Proprietors had provided funding to the king and helped him restore the crown. So they wanted to make money. You know, they had this huge block of land with no English settlers in it. I mean, it was lots of Native Americans at that time, lots of them, but no Europeans. And so they retained the services of a guy named William Hilton to survey the coast. And I'm going to pass this around, but so their colony, Carolina, was North and South Carolina, extended all the way from the Savannah River to the Virginia border. And they were trying to figure out the best place to establish colonies. And if you look at the map, I'm just going to cheat a little bit and tell you what you're supposed to see. All up through here where the current settlements were, it's very difficult to get in and out of that area by sea because you got all these barrier outlets and these really shallow sails. And that extends on down the coast until you get to what? Guess what? Southport. The Cape Fear River dumps directly in the ocean. By then current standards, it was pretty navigable. Had the bar at the mouth was 12 feet. So most ships at that time didn't draw 12 feet until you went way on down south to Charleston area. And that was a similar situation. The problem down there was it was awful close to Spanish Florida. And that was a big fear. So William Hilton recommended that the proprietors sell land in the Cape Fear region. And they found a group of folks from the Caribbean, Barbados, and New England that wanted to move south, find good land. And a group in 1664 from the Massachusetts Bay Colony came down and settled on Town Creek. For those of you who haven't been up and down the river, if you drive from here to Wilmington on 133, the route closest to the river, the second bridge you get to, second major bridge you get to, is Town Creek. It's right there by that general store that has all the new bullet trains. That's Town Creek. Gator, with 18-foot gator, supposedly. And if you go just like a mile or 3/4 of a mile, it dumps in the Cape Fear. It's a low, it's a low-lying area with plenty of water, and so this group settled there in 1664. They only stayed a few months. They lacked support, and you folks lost their enthusiasm and went back to Massachusetts Bay Colony. Meanwhile, a second group from Barbados, primarily with other Europeans, decided to give it a shot. So they came in 1666, same area, built a fortified compound, had farms up and down the river, and at peak, there were like 800 people settled up there. Put that in perspective, the whole time that Brunswick County existed, it never exceeded 300 people. Most of the time, like 150, 200 people. That was a big settlement and was doing well. But remember we talked earlier about tobacco. One of the reasons I raised that issue aside from the movement south was it was the first exportable crop. The original plan for the Barbados colony was to develop exports, food to the Caribbean, and something back to Europe. The something back to Europe was going to be cloth. Part of the population was French Huguenots. They had moved to the Low Countries. A lot of French Huguenots had moved to Britain. And they were having a tough time making a living. And there was a huge group that were expert weavers. So they decided to join the colony. What they were going to do was, the colonists were going to grow sheep and maybe some other plant-based fiber like cotton or flax or whatever. Flax wasn't appropriate, but they didn't know that at the time. And that was going to be their export to Europe. And things seemed to be going well. There were lots of Native Americans at that time, and there were conflicts. There were skirmishes. There was the threat. There was always a threat. And plus, once the Huguenots came over from Britain, the level of support for Britain diminished greatly. And then another disaster happened in 1660. In 1666, the governor was coming into the colony with a huge amount of supplies. And if you get out of channel here, you know that it's shallow water. And he his ship got out of water, floundered, lost all his supplies. Nothing else was coming from England. So by 1667, the colony was abandoned. I mean, it was gone. Most of the colonists moved south to what is now Charleston. It was the second Charlestown. And again, a similar situation that we have here with deep water entryway to the ocean and very defensible positions, and that colony grew and prospered, as we all know. So that attempt to settle this area failed. And the key was they didn't discover value of native stores. They were surrounded by riches, didn't know it. Because the next attempt, well, actually there was a second attempt in the New Bern area, Craven County. A group of, again, Huguenots, French, German, Protestants, Swiss, got a grant from the proprietors in 1710 to settle the New Bern area. And they did. They came over. They were hard-working farmers and were doing well, but they needed support. The South of Virginia colonists were very affluent at this time and loaned the colony $20,000, which was a lot of money. And that was enough to secure the equipment, the seeds, the supplies, the other stuff they needed. And that colony survived and became the furthest south colony in North Carolina. Yes, because in 1712, the proprietors got together and decided to split the colony. You had South Carolina that ended somewhere south of the Cape Fear, a very poorly defined border, and North Carolina was from south of the Cape Fear to Virginia. And that was in 1712. About that time, one of the reasons the New Bern settlements were having so much problems, again, was again Native Americans. The Tuscarora Wars erupted, and they were highly stressed. They really having a tough time. Some forces came down from Virginia, the South of Virginia colonies to help out, but a big contingent came up from Charleston, South Carolina, led by Maurice Moore. Maurice Moore was the oldest son of John Moore, who was then governor of South Carolina. So he led a group of soldiers and a big contingent of Yamasee Indians, Native Americans, come up to give relief to the colonies in the New Bern area. And they were successful. They just demolished the Native Americans, as we always do. and many of them were taken captives and made slaves by the Alexis, and then they all went back to South Carolina. More recently came up to New Bern, came through here. We don't know exactly where, but somewhere in the lower Cape Fear. He crossed the Cape Fear River en route to New Bern. And he liked what he saw. He thought this was terrific. Absolutely fabulous. Nobody was here. So when he got back, he applied for a grant or to buy or secure land on the west bank of the Cape Fear River. It started out with 1,500 acres, but ultimately wound up with like 8,000 acres. And in 1725, came up with a large contingent of folks from the Charleston area, actually Goose Creek, which is just inland from Charleston. That was the Morris home land, Goose Creek, South Carolina. And they came up, and by 1726, they had founded Brunswick Town. And that developed really, really quickly to a point. You know, it never got very big, as I said earlier. But by that time, the British Navy was having difficulty getting naval stores from Northern Europe. So they were in desperate need of naval stores and large diameter timbers for the naval and civilian shipping industry. And so the area around Brunswick Town, Orton Plantation and others quickly started harvesting naval stores from the abundant stands along Lake Pond. And ships were coming in on a very regular basis, loading up with rosin, turpentine, tar pitch, and so on and so forth, going back to England. And they'd come over with ballast. In fact, there's ballast on everywhere you look around Brunswick Town. They'd come over empty, load up with naval stores, and go back. And they didn't bring much because there wasn't many people there. But what was happening once the door opened in 1725, well, let me step back. One thing I forgot to mention. In 1729, just 4 years later, the Crown bought out 7 of the 8 proprietors, and North Carolina became a royal colony, as did South Carolina. But we're not going to talk much about South Carolina. And at that point, the series of governors that had been sent over by proprietors, there were like 5 or 6 of them, were replaced by a lot of royal governors. And it was entirely different. The position of the proprietary governors was to figure out some way to sell land, because that's what the proprietors wanted. They wanted cash, and it was kind of difficult to do. When the colony became a royal colony, one of the big issues was population, get people in. Because again, we're still near Spanish Florida, and there's a constant series of large and small skirmishes and wars and battles down in the Caribbean. And it was always a concern. So the royal governors were charged with populating Carolina. There were five royal governors between 1729. Actually, the first one didn't arrive till the first one was here. It didn't take office until 1730, early 31. And between then and the American Revolution. The first one was George Barrington, and he did practically nothing. He did negotiate with the governor of Virginia, and they settled the eastern part of the North Carolina Virginia border. And that's about all he accomplished. But then the next 3 are the ones we're going to talk about today. The first one was Gabriel Johnston. Second was Arthur Dobbs. Third one was William Tryon. And the last one was Josiah Martin. And we'll talk about him just a little bit. 2 of them were Scotchmen or Scotch-Irishmen, Dobbs and Johnston. 2 of them were English. The 2 Scotch-Irish governors were aristocrats. Tryon was not an aristocrat. In fact, his family had migrated from the Low Countries to England just a couple of generations before. But his wife was from an aristocratic family. And Josiah Martin was just a soldier. So let's sort of go through them in order. Well, let me just say, until I get to it. Okay, here we go. The governors. In 1734, Gabriel Johnston showed up. And Brunswick, that's where he landed. But his patron, his royal patron, was Lord Compton, the Earl of Wilmington. So you could judge that he quickly put a lot of attention into Wilmington. At that time it was called Newtown. He put a lot of attention into Wilmington. But Gabriel Johnston was a very interesting person. First of all, he was young. He was born in 1699. Got to North Carolina, got to Brunswicktown in 1734, as I said. So he was only 35 years old. And he was educated at the University of St. Andrews, Scotland. And he also served for a number of years as professor of Oriental languages. So he was a very well-educated governor. He did move to London from Scotland and became quite active in British politics. He was known as a writer, and he was a liberal. He was close to the royal family and to the Whig Party. And through Lord Compton, he got appointed as governor of North Carolina. He was given 400 acres of land near Wilmington, near present-day Wilmington. He was really, really concerned with the condition of the colony when he got here. What he saw in Brunswicktown, in Wilmington, and further inland was moral laxity, disregard for law, inadequate educational facilities, oppression of the poor, and those kinds of issues. So what he wanted to do, he was governor for 18 years. In the next 18 years, he concentrated on moral issues by encouraging the building of churches. They were all languages, by the way. So, but in general, they encouraged all denominations. But he did during his administration, plans for the church at Brunswicktown were developed, along with plans for church in Wilmington, all up and down the coast, and bringing in clergy to staff these churches. But he had the legislature, or the governor's council, same thing, pass a series of laws, colonial laws, or laws for the colony. For example, all work and amusement were forbidden on Sunday. And if you violated that, you had to pay a fine of 14 shillings. Unmarried mothers were committed to jail until they were willing to disclose the paternity of their child. He also had a law passed that required clergymen, lay readers, and other church officials to read these laws in all churches, chapels, and places of religious worship. So his deal was moral, but he also encouraged the initial flow of immigrants from, up to this time, the immigrants had been primarily from Great Britain, Englishmen. He was the first of the governors to really encourage migration from Scotland and from Ulster, from Northern Ireland or Ulster. Plans for the church building here was in Brunswick Town was finalized in 1748. Project was started. There was at the time the whole area was still quite poor, and all of the churches suffered for lack of funding. There was a solution, but it was not a very good one. All the colonies were subjected to a church tax. Everybody had to pay. There were two main items that were taxed. One was wheeled vehicles, any type of wheeled vehicle, second was slaves. And it collected quite a bit of money. But all of it went to the Anglican Church. None went to the Protestant, the other Protestant churches, of course, they were the Catholics. And then, toward the end of his term in office, and the colony was becoming much more prosperous. A lot of plantations and farms all up and down the river system. But in 1748, their worst fears occurred. The Spanish did attack Brunswick Town, just some concern for a long time. Fort Johnston had been authorized in 1745, but not finished. So the Spanish came up the river and stopped. They did stop here trying to find slaves. It was primarily a slaving mission. So they went on up to Brunswick Town and ran everybody off, and we stayed there for like 3 days, 2 or 3 days. And a militia leader from Wilmington, William Tryon, came upon the scene with a group of militia, caught them by surprise, and mowed them down. And they all abandoned land, got on their 2 ships out in the river, one of which promptly blew up, the Fortuna, and sailed on down the river and left. The Fortuna was salvaged, and the proceeds divided between Brunswick Town and Wilmington Church. Well, meanwhile, Governor Johnston had moved all the way up to Chalwyn County, and he died in Edmonton in 1752. So, the successful regime, really lots of settlements. About this time, the colonial authorities also were encouraging migration and settlements from other areas. The Great Wagon Road was developed. It started up in the kind of the middle of Pennsylvania, came down through Maryland and Virginia, and this leg of it came down through the middle of North Carolina to by Salisbury, and lots and lots and lots of Scotch-Irish their families looking for land started down this road. And the whole middle part of this state was settled initially by Scotch-Irish, but closely followed by the Germans. There were also a lot of German settlers who came down this road. But Johnston died. They had no governor. But help was on the way. The minister of state, I forgot the official title, gave the job to Arthur Dobbs, who was appointed in 1753. He arrived again in Brunswick County in 1754. Arthur was born in Ayrshire, Scotland, where his mother had been sent to cause of political unrest in Ulster. But he later, in fact a year later, moved back to Northern Ireland where his father was still there. His father was Richard Dobbs of Ferguson. He was of Scottish descent. I can't handle some of his names. County Antrim, and and he was the sheriff of Antrim, and his mother was Mary Stewart. Now Dobbs was also educated. He became an engineer and was Surveyor General of Ireland, and he supervised the construction of the Irish Parliament building in Dublin. He was quite he was born, by the way, in 1689, and anyway, he continued on to build other public buildings, and then in 1720 he succeeded his father. He was appointed High Sheriff of Antrim, and in 1727 he was elected member of Parliament, a seat which he held until 1750. While he was a member of the Irish Parliament, he purchased 400,000 acres of land in North Carolina. He was one of the major landowners in the area. And that was in 1745. Okay, October 1754, he arrived. Now, he turned out to be slightly different, somewhat different than Johnston. He was a strong supporter of religion in the colonies, but he encouraged all sects. I mean, Anglicans, Baptists, Presbyterians, a lot of Presbyterians, because he really was the major mover of Scots-Irish into this area. Most of them down the Great Wagon Road, some directly in Wilmington. But also, that was the period right after the massacres in northern Scotland of the Highland Scots at the Battle of Coote. And many Highland Scots came to North Carolina. They all landed in Wilmington. I came right up the river from here, and moved on up Cape Fear River to Cross Creek, now Fayetteville, and became quite a strong part of the economy of the colony. So at this point, we still had the downriver settlements in Brunswick Town and Wilmington, but then we had the very significant settlements in Wilmington. We still had the New Bern settlements growing. We had settlements by Jacksonville that did have water access, just didn't go very far inland. And of course the most affluent part of the colony was up by Virginia. And it was quite a contrast to the slave-owning coastal aristocracy who did primarily rice. But this time rice had been started. Rice, naval stores, and that sort. And as you move on the river, tobacco, to the hardscrabble farmers, the Piedmont, that mostly had small amounts of land which they farmed themselves. And that became an issue a bit later that we'll talk about. Governor Dobbs was very active, like I said, in many areas. He was getting to be kind of like seriously old, but in he died in 1765. In the late 1750s, he married a 13-year-old and stayed married to her for about 11 years. And then he died in 1765. He was 76 years old. So we first governor was young, he died young. Second governor was old and died old. Once again, the colony needed a strong governor, and help was at hand. William Tryon was already in Brunswick Town as lieutenant governor to Dobbs. and quite frustrated that Dobbs hadn't resigned or died or something. He wanted to be governor. Now, Tryon, the first of the two English governors, was quite a different character. He was born in 1729, and I guess I didn't write down when he died, but I think around 1790, I think 1789. His parents were Charles Tryon and Lady Mary Shirley. His mother was an aristocrat. He became a professional soldier when his family bought him a commission, and achieved the rank of lieutenant colonel. Quite busy in the 7 Years' War. Quite a successful soldier. He retired as a half-paid lieutenant colonel, and through family influence was appointed lieutenant governor of North Carolina. And during his tenure, the population continued to grow, and his government continued to encourage settlements in the Piedmont and parts further up the river coastal plains. But signs of conflict were already apparent. The colonial assembly was, and the governor's council was not very powerful, but they did have the ability to levy taxes and things of that nature. And the 5 upper northeastern counties, the original Virginia settlements, controlled like 60% of the votes in the assembly. So what they were doing was taxing themselves quite lightly and taxing the newer settlements in the Piedmont and the Lower Cape Fear quite heavily. And that was not an acceptable issue. And that led to the regulator movement. The regulators were groups of primarily Scotch-Irish. In fact, the British foreign ministers, and they asked for better government in the Piedmont. They wanted honest tax collectors. There was a lot of corruption. They wanted the ability to influence the laws by getting more representation, none of which was forthcoming. So they armed themselves, quite a large group of men. And in 1771, that's right. William Tryon became sufficiently concerned about the situation that he recruited a militia force, primarily from the coastal counties, the upper coastal counties, south of Wilmington. Most of the leaders of that force later became patriots and leaders of the American forces during the Revolution. But this force, they had a couple of counties, marched west to the Hillsborough area. And they had a significant conflict there with the better armed and organized militia, scattered the regulators, destroyed the movement. Tryon, I think, thought things would be all right. But what that succeeded in doing was solidifying the position of the small farmers in opposition to the British Crown. The other major achievement he did, he moved the capital from Brunswick Town. He resided in Russellburg, same as Dobbs, but he moved the capital to Newburgh, which is much more centrally located, and built Tryon's Palace, which was very controversial because the funds for that mostly came from the Piedmont area. But anyway, he got all that done, and the colonial authorities in London thought he was doing a great job because he was then appointed as governor of New York, which at that time was the most important of the British colonies, second most important. And moved to New York. And by the time he left, that was in 1771, after he crushed the railway movement, there were like 1,000 plus or minus plantations and farms up and down the Cape Fear basin. It goes, it's a big river basin. Northeast Cape Fear, the Cape Fear, Black River, South River, way on up. And there was just a steady flow of steel naval stores and lumber, but also rice and increasingly tobacco coming down the river to be exported. And the whole region was had become quite prosperous. And then came, the next president, the next governor was Josiah Martin, as we mentioned earlier. Now, Tryon was a very vigorous, active man, military. Josiah Martin was also a retired military, but he had very poor health, didn't have a great deal of stamina. And when he came in, there was not only agitation from Piedmont, but the coastal counties had really started rebelling, I guess the right word. There was, just before Tryon left, there were protests in Brunswick County, and colonists from Brunswick County and Wilmington peacefully occupied his home in Russellboro. But he was actually a very clever politician. He got that part resolved by letting the stamp collector retire, resign, and things settled down. But by the time Martin came on board, he never really had control of the colonial council and the governor's council. And in 1775, he was kind of forced out. And initially, he came down from Newburgh to Brunswick County, and then down to here to Fort Johnston. And Patriot forces assembled near Fort Johnston, laid siege to it. So then he moved offshore to a British warship and eventually left the colony. But the other thing he did was put in motion a plan to reassert royal control. And the plan was to remove Highland Scots. They'd all sworn oaths to the British crown to support the crown in return for being able to move to North Carolina. He was going to recruit a group of Highland Scots coming down the river to Brunswick County and meet a British force coming from New York and Great Britain and reoccupy the colony. Well, we all know what happened there. It was called Moore's Creek. That was when I was going to comment on the British Foreign Office when they got word of the defeat at Moore's Creek. Said it's not Englishmen fighting our forces. This is them Scotch-Irish. Because Moore's Creek was primarily a Scottish battle we had the Scotch-Irish Patriot forces and the Highland Scot Royal forces. And of course that led to 4 years of uninterrupted peaceful development in North Carolina. So by the time the British came back successfully, 1780, they couldn't sustain their position because the state forces had become so strong. So the royal governors and the successes in the Revolution led to a period of unprecedented growth and prosperity in this region, but not uniformly. First, Brunswick Town was never very, very big anyway. It's never a very nice place to live. Surrounded by swamps, no good water supply, much closer to the coast of Wilmington, and the concern about the Spanish, all of which happened. And and the Revolution, there was an awful lot of activity around Brunswick Town. Russellboro was burned, most of the town was burned, the church was burned, and the citizens moved across the river up to Wilmington to a more secure location. And after the war, most of them didn't come back. This straggled on for a while. Meanwhile, the river was being improved, and bigger ships could get all the way up to Wilmington across the flats. So Brunswick Town kind of disappeared by the late 1700s. Meanwhile, Wilmington was booming. It was absolutely booming. And the other thing that happened, this little village down here in the mouth of the river called Smithfield in 1792 developed. And it prospered, never grew very big, but it prospered because of Wilmington. It provided homes for all the river pilots that ships up to Wilmington. And it became the summer home for the affluent class in Wilmington. It became a place of salubrious breezes that you could get away from those heat in the summer. So anyway, that's where Southport came from. That's where it all came from. That's my comments. Any questions? Yes, sir.
When did the split between North and South Carolina occur? What was the process?
The local proprietaries did that. They met in 1712 and decided, there was a very prosperous area down in the Charleston area, the lower coastal area, and a very prosperous area up the coast, and almost nothing in between. And they decided they could do a better job of developing the new colonies by dividing them. Yes?
I'm kind of interested in the area down where Charleston, down from the Gator Hole, right down where the Town Creek meets the Cape River. I guess it was maybe about 7 years ago. Jim McKee had a tour that went down that direction. I don't know if you were on that or not.
I was not.
Okay. He had a tour that went down, and there's hardly anything down there that they could find, or that they had some digs down there, I think, originally.
Yeah.
And they couldn't find very much down there, but I didn't realize it was spread out as much as it was.
Yeah, it was spread out quite a bit.
Yeah.
Probably as far upriver, at least as far as present-day Wilmington, and all the way down to here. And quite a few farms. I went on a tour sponsored by we went on a tour sponsored by the Coastal Makers. Thank you. And the plantations along there all over it. In the middle of one that borders Orton, you can drive right down that point. And we did that. You can see some brick shards and some other stuff that may or may not be. Yeah, that's the site right there.
I've always thought it would be neat to have a tour like you're talking about that you went on, that you could go to the plantations or where they were in between Southport and Wilmington up there. There's what, maybe 7 or 8 along the river to go up that way?
Yeah.
Is there ever a chance of getting together and having somebody that could know that area and the history of that area? I thought that would be kind of neat.
Well, of course, Jim McKee might be able to put something together, but there's still three major plantations that are there in place. Orton, as we know, is being developed, and officially, I think, will be open or partially open to the public for tours, whatever. The other 2 plantations just north of there are privately owned, but the Coastal Conservancy has conservation easements on both of them. In fact, on all 3 of them. So all the land from Sunny Point, Brunswick County Sunny Point, all the way up to those settlements in the edge of Leland and Belleville, that's protected by conservation easement. And I keep voting to it. Yeah, I keep voting on doing it again. Yeah.
Charlie, where do you get all your information? Like, there's a lot of, how did you find all of this?
Well, some of it in the old-fashioned way. I Googled it.
He spends a lot of time on the computer.
But there are a number of publications which I could recommend. And I didn't write this, but James Front's History of the Lower Cape Fear is one that probably the best. Some of these books you have to read with a filter in front of their eyes, because they're very, very racist. But they do have a lot of good history. In fact, I may try to put together a list of stuff that I have, and I know we're good. But there's an amazing amount of stuff.
That you would find.
Yeah, that you can just Google colonial governors of North Carolina. Lots of stuff pops up, some of which I had, some of which I didn't.
It is interesting, but it's, it's a digging, is that true, is that not true, is that, the more that you read, then you start to take Shannon a different path.
Well, again, going back to the books, almost nothing in the internet accounts or the books I referred to make any mention very much of blacks or Native Americans. Because by the time the successful settlements occurred in 1725 and 6, there were no Native Americans left, they were all gone. And the blacks were all in chattel, and they were just kind of ignored. Yeah, Bob.
Chuck, Nathaniel Rice, who was in this local area, in the Winnebago area, he was an acting governor twice, I believe.
Who was that name?
Nathaniel Rice.
Yes.
And did he do any good in this process, or was he just a placeholder?
I don't recall that he did anything significant. That was actually prior to the royal governor, government period.
Well, he was right before right before Johnston.
Well, Burlington and him kind of interact. Burlington was governor twice, once under the proprietors and once under the crown. And they didn't like each other. There was constant conflict. To take a threat, I think, anyway, there was conflict. And it was kind of that transition period where lots of things were happening, and I'm sure he probably did have some influence on it. But in general, the colonial governors, one of the issues was when they usually died in office. And it'd be a year before London knew they were dead. It'd be another year before you got somebody. There was usually a 1 to 2 year lag between governors. One of my kinsmen was acting governor twice because he was the biggest landowner up in the northeast corner and head of the governor's council. And when the governor died, they appointed him. And then a new governor arrived, and he'd go back to his. It happened the second time they appointed him governor. Then he died in office. So. Things didn't move very fast. It took a long time. Well, thank you very much for your attention.